Hey guys, Wolf of Dimensions here with my first review of Godzilla King of the Monsters, which I just saw today. I saw D-Man saw it too at the same day, so hey, we're back at it again, right? Got new content to share. Well, I'm sure he's gonna have a field day with all this. But moving on from that, this is my non-spoiler review of Godzilla King of the Monsters. So overall, I'm not really going to give away any plot. I'm going to talk about a few things. I'm going to talk about the monsters. I'm going to talk about their similarities between their counterparts, their Toho counterparts. So if you don't want to hear descriptions about the monsters and stuff, ignore that. I'll go over some tiny plot details, going back to what I said a minute ago. Right, moving on. So, for the story-wise, as most people know, we don't go back to Ford Brody. He's pretty much, his story's done, and what I'm thinking is going to happen is that, besides the main scientists, I think that all these movies are going to have a different human team, a different human dramatization in each movie, because Kong had its own people, Godzilla had its own people, Godzilla King of the Monsters had its own people. Next is Godzilla vs. Kong. My theory will be, proven then or unproven. But, yeah, it follows, I think it's Millie Bobby Brown, Vera Farmiga, and, I can't remember his first name, but, his last name's Chandler, and he's, he's probably the main character of this story. Now, the whole idea is that all of these monsters, and this is all what you've seen in the trailer, all of these monsters are being, woken from what happened after 2014. Now, some of them are crazy, and it's going to be intense when you guys see what some of the others look like. We don't get a good look. There are quite a few. We only get to look at maybe 2 or 3. But really, this whole movie is based on the world's reaction to all these monsters getting woke up, how they get woke up, situations like that. Onto the monsters, and again, if you don't want to hear about how they're described, even though we've seen them in the trailers, go away now. So, this is a non-spoiler for the story. Now, let's start off with the main man himself, Godzilla. Now, overall, he's vaguely similar to his, his Toho counterpart, except the spines, which most people should note is Godzilla 1954. He actually has some of the Showa roars. Of course, there's also that lovely Godzilla theme song. Rodan, in my opinion, is a good mix between Fire Rodan and the original Rodan of 1956. He is a good combination of both. Now, Rodan's role, I will say, in the movie, it's not what I expected, honestly. I mean, it might fit in with later versions of Rodan, but if you're expecting, I'm just going to say this, if you're expecting a complete similarity to Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster, which of course not exactly, but I mean to that outcome, that's not what you're going to get. With Ghidorah feels like a nice mix of every Ghidorah. He has the kind of plain bold, like the boldness, like just the set features of the 1991 Ghidorah, the Heisei Ghidorah, but he also has little features on the head and how each head has slightly different features that kind of remind me of the Showa's GMK Ghidorah. Now, just as we all predicted, now this is another spoiler for Ghidorah. Skip ahead a few seconds, probably to the Mothra color, or Mothra one, the Mothra poster, but Ghidorah is an alien in this. He is an alien. He does come from outer space. So, that is a pretty neat send-back. Now, this all accumulates in the idea of how the guy who directed this was a huge Godzilla fan, and you can see in every piece of music, everything. It's really awesome. And now that we're in the Mothra section, since we did the Ghidorah stuff, Mothra is interesting in this movie because, as most have seen, she's kind of bug-like the GMK movies. But that's not that bad. They kind of updated it in a really neat way. Her role is somewhat limited, but I mean, in some ways, most Mothras, most incarnations of Mothra are. So, I mean, I think we'll get a lot more of her in later incarnations. but she had a major importance overall. There's not much to say about the design because of how different it is. I mean, it keeps the wing color set, which is really nice. It would have been a shame if they would have tried to have changed it. Now, they did mute some of the colors, which is fine. Honestly, it's like the color set from 2004 Mothra, if you remember that. And luckily, she has way more screen time than 2004 Mothra. That was kind of a disappointment with that one. So, yeah, and the story overall, I think it's really good. I think it brings out... okay, imagine as a kid, you watched all those, Godzilla movies, the Showa, Heisei as a kid, and, it was disappointing because it followed the same formula. Godzilla and the other monster would show up for a few minutes, be gone. Every 30 or so minutes you'd see one of them, and then they'd have 1 to 2 fights. The first fight, Godzilla loses, and the second fight, he wins. This movie, imagine, it blends how often you see humans and how often you see monsters. And not just that, it did one of my favorite things. They humanized the monsters more. The problem with the older, with some of the older Godzilla films is that, to me, for Godzilla to work, like, especially as a hero, which, as much as people tried to say he was a force of nature in 2014, I said this way back, he is the new hero Godzilla, which is what he is now. As much as people tried to set him up as a force of nature, he has, quote-unquote, humanity in him. And that is fascinating to me. The fact that, it's like, he can recognize humans on a sentient level, and he is sentient. All these monsters are. Ghidorah's sentient beyond belief. Ghidorah's pretty neat because he has a back and forth with the other heads, which is pretty awesome. The least sentient one, in my opinion, is Rodan, but it could solely be because Rodan is, he's more of a hard head than not. Every movie he's ever been in. Like, remember Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla 2, he did not think straight at all in that movie. But yeah, the sentience was important because it's almost as if, they fleshed out the monsters as much, or if not more so, than the humans. And most people who love Godzilla would rather see them flesh out Godzilla any day, and they did that perfectly. There are a few fan favorite things from the Showa era, the Heisei era, that are coming back in this film for all of you. There's not much to pick up in the Millennium era because not as much was memorable in that time, but a lot of Showa and Heisei things are coming back, namely a form, a weapon, all that kinds of stuff. That's all coming back. And it's pretty awesome, to say the least, how it's used, how it's adapted, how these modern monsters stand up to what their counterparts had to stand up to 50, 60 years ago. Each one feels like it's fresh. It doesn't feel like overused. It doesn't feel... These monsters don't feel old anymore. Like, and I don't mean like old in the sense that, they're decrepit and useless. Like, they still haven't gone out of style, and this emphasizes it. These monsters are classic, and their stories being retold in this form, it complements everything that Ghidorah the three-headed monster alone stood for, as well as some of what Godzilla stands for. Ghidorah the three-headed monster to me was one of my favorite. It was absolutely one of my favorite Showa Godzilla films, if not my favorite besides the original, because it combined kind of everything that I loved about Godzilla. But, of course, it had its goofier elements. Not to say that this one lacks comedy, but, I don't know. The trailers, I'll say this to anyone who's looking forward to a comedic version of this. There's not as much comedy as the trailers insisted. There are a few lines that are pretty good. Also, warning to anyone. Be prepared for loss. That's all I'm going to say with that part. That's not a spoiler as much as it is a warning. You're going to be surprised at some of the twists in this. The human characters, they don't fall flat, especially the main character, which is the Chandler. I think that's his last name, the actor's name. But and they're really good twists. The trailers were really good at misleading. Honestly, I thought when I saw the trailer, I was like, well, they're showing about everything that's going to happen. It's insane, how much, trailers still leave to the imagination. And I think the main character, he's really fleshed out, and he has this whole arc with Godzilla, which, if you've listened to the trailers, you can hear some of that. Vera Farmiga, the mother of the daughter who's played by Millie Bobby Brown, she is really good. She, like, her role is pretty interesting. I mean, it's kind of ludicrous, some of the things she comes up with, but I mean, in history, that's not uncommon. And I'd like to say, if anyone thinks, you know, anything I've said is spoilery, I'm sorry. I'm doing it to the best of my ability because I'm really excited for this. And I'm trying my best to not spoil anything because of how good it was, and I want everyone to have that same kind of experience I did, which it was a really amazing experience. Just some of the music cues and some of the familiarities. It's like it took the in some scenes, it's almost like it took Godzilla stereotypes, but folded them in a way where they wouldn't stereotypes anymore. It felt like a natural part of it, and it felt just like Godzilla. There's not much more I can say that with the monsters than it feels like it's Godzilla. In the plot, it kind of brings me back to the days of the Showa Heisei era, where things were a little wacky. I mean the more serious Showa films, but things are a tiny bit wacky with the plot, but it's still at the same time it's engaging and fun, and it's crazy, and all the effects and stuff. You guys are in for a real treat at the end of this movie, because honestly, it looks amazing. So enough talking about it. I'm kind of just rolling along with it. I'm not this is unscripted. I'm trying to get this out as soon as possible. I know I put a video out earlier about this, and some people were not happy that I guess I didn't actually say anything, but I had just gotten back and I had stuff to do. But yeah, this will be my first trailer for it, or not trailer, but my first video for it, and I'm gonna do a spoiler review tomorrow. I'm gonna go into detail about story, everything, what I rate it, all that kind of stuff, opinions on what could have been better, what went wrong, what was good, and overall what the future of Godzilla is looking like. I will go over that kind of stuff tomorrow, and I'm really excited to, because, well, you'll have to wait to hear about it tomorrow. So guys, I'm going to leave off here. I hope you enjoyed this video. I enjoyed making this video. I just enjoyed getting all of these thoughts off my chest. If there's anything I missed in the non-spoiler trailer, please tell me. I will add it tomorrow for any opinions of people who haven't seen the movie, and for people who have. I will do a, for stuff, if people tell me if there's stuff I missed in this non-spoiler trailer that you want to know about, I will do a segment of it, no matter how short, in the next video before my spoiler one, so you guys can get what you want to know without getting completely spoiled. So yeah, this is Over Dimensions signing off. Hope you guys have a good day.